Welcome back. Week 12 fantasy football waiver wire pickup show. As always, Luke Reimer here, joined by Ashton Rich. We are here to give the best. I titled this the best Week 12 fantasy football advice on the internet. So we're here. We're here to give you, the first hand takes, what we're thinking about for this week. And Ashton, I think we can just kick off right into it. We can go. Let's just start right at the top with quarterbacks. Everyone watching, go check out flurrysports.org. Henry wrote up a big article that we're going to highlight some players from to give you an idea. He goes way more in depth than we will. It's a great article every single week. I've been using it. I went from a 0-6 in one of my leagues to 5-6 in the playoff hunt, just
Nice.
by putting players in. Yeah, it's been nice. Now that has come by way of like everyone else having their best player on bye. I just kind of got in one of those lucky streaks. But hey, it's fantasy football. You take what you can get, right?
Exactly.
So right off the bat, we've talked about him a lot. Is Sam Darnold. Um, so against the Rams, he didn't have the greatest game, right? Coming out with 4 interceptions. I mean, he's going against the Tennessee Titans this week, who quarterbacks have had a somewhat of a good repertoire against. Jackson Smith and Jigba looks like one of the better wide receivers in the NFL this year. I like both the tight ends. I like both the running backs. If you're a quarterback needy team, I guess I should tell everyone who's on bye first before we get into it. I know Chargers, Dolphins, Broncos are on bye. So if you're someone who came in with Justin Herbert, with the Bo Nix, and you're looking for a quarterback, Ashton, is Sam Darnold someone that you're really looking at, putting, maybe not putting a ton of money, but putting a little fab on to at least get a streamer for this week?
Yeah, for sure. I think you kind of laid it out. The Titans have kind of been a soft matchup. Tennessee's kind of in some dire straits right now. But this could easily be one of those games, kind of like the Seahawks had against the Cardinals. I think it was last week, maybe 2 weeks ago, where they just kind of like just beat the brakes off of them early, and Darnold got all his work done before the halftime break really even came through. So I think he's a solid start for sure. Kind of surprised he's only owned in sub 50% of leagues. I would think there's
Agreed.
probably some people out there that are wanting to ride the wave. Maybe they've got a bad taste in their mouth from his performance this week, but he seems like somebody that I would definitely would want to be starting given good matchups.
Yeah. And then T-Bomb, welcome back, T-Bomb. First question of the night. Anyone watching has questions, please drop them. We're here to help you out. More than just waiver wire pickup, start, sit, trade. I think a lot of people's trade deadline maybe passed is this week, so I imagine that's probably a hot topic. But T-Bomb, he's starting Rome Odunze or DeAndre Swift over Travis Etienne for his flex. We'll start with that before we get into the second one. So Chicago is home against Pittsburgh, which has kind of shown that you can really move the ball against. And Jacksonville is at Arizona. I think I like Rome in this the most, right?
Yeah, I think this is Rome or Etienne for me. I don't. I think he's
Etienne for sure over Swift. I agree with that.
Yeah, I think Swift is definitely the odd man out of this 3-pack, but um, I think I'm like you. I think I go Rome, just because I think he's got more maybe upside than ETN. The only thing about ETN is I haven't seen any update on what Bayshaw Tutin's injury looks like. I don't know if he's going to miss this week, if he's going to, what that situation looks like. To me, that's something to monitor. If Bayshaw Tutin's going to be out, and we know ETN's going to be getting the majority of the carries anyway, maybe that pushes him over Rome for me.
Yeah,
But I think that, if Bayshaw Tutin's there and going to play, I think I go Rome.
yeah, agreed. T-Bomb, I assume it's probably somewhat of a PPR too, so it's going to help in your flex. So yeah, I like Rome. And then are we starting Dak or Goff? Dallas is home against Philadelphia, which I don't love, and Detroit is home against the Giants. I think Goff, right?
I think this is an easy Goff, yeah, for me.
Yeah, with the Giants coming to Detroit, this feels like it could be a classic Lions 45-point game.
Yeah, I mean, Lions, you can move the ball against the Giants. We just saw that. You can they're kind of getting into that area where now on defense where you can kind of do whatever you want to an extent.
Yeah.
So I especially, Lions are going to have a bad taste in their mouth after what was probably one of the more egregious calls I've ever seen in
Yeah,
a
not
Island
great.
game like that. But Dan Campbell's going to have the boys ready to play. They're going to be pissed off, and like you said, this could be a situation where they come out and they're like, you know what, let's just take it out on the next guy up.
Yeah, I agree with you 100%. Other quarterback to talk about that Henry highlighted is we have a record-setting Jacoby Brissett, as everyone predicted, set the record for most completions in a game, which I think kind of, it was a weird game where you set the record for most completions and you only score a little bit more than 20 points. I know a couple of interceptions had to deal with that, but that kind of feels like this Arizona Cardinals team is. They're going to be playing from behind. They're going to need to sling the rock, and obviously they believe in Jacoby Brissett enough to sling the rock. Playing home against Jacksonville. Jacksonville's got to go across country for this. This is not another game where Jacoby Brissett's going to set the record, right, for most completions. But as someone who started Jacoby Brissett twice, as I drafted Kyler Murray and I was just trying to work things out, I think Jacoby Brissett has a great floor, right? He feels right around that 15 to 18 to 19 somewhere mark, and then everything else is extra, kind of like we saw. If they're behind, he's going to sling the rock and he's going to get that 20-plus point mark.
Yeah, that's kind of where I'm at with Jacoby. It's just, they're kind of just letting him kind of do the same thing that teams let Joe Flacco do, right? They're just kind of letting him sling pill. Part of that might be because the Cardinals have been struggling to run the ball a little bit. Part of it might just be like, the last two games, they kind of got scripted out of the run game really early. Right. Both of them kind of got in blowout situations really, really quick. I don't know if they're going to be in blowout territory situations with the Jaguars, just because I get that the Jaguars just kind of little broed the Chargers, mysteriously. But I just, to me, I think that's more of a microcosm of, it was a West Coast team going East Coast to play a new kick. Those kind of things always get weird. But yeah, I think that game ends up more competitive. I'm not sure if the Cardinals can run the ball, but I think if you're in a situation where we know Jacoby might throw the ball 40 times, he's a solid start if you don't have anything better.
Yep. And then let's just jump right into his teammate that we've kind of talked about for the last couple of weeks, saying, hey, pick this guy up. I don't know if he's going to play this week, but this might be your last chance to pick up Trey Benson, right?
Yeah, anyone coming off the IR, Hampton's another watch. Obviously, I think he's going to be out for a little bit more time, and I think managers are probably more tempted to hold on to Hampton versus Benson. But like you said, Benson's coming back soon. Whether it's this week or not remains to be seen. I think the Cardinals desperately need help in the run game. Bam Knight is the combination of Bam Knight, Michael Carter, and Mari DeMarcado is just not really getting it done in the run game. Part of that might be game script reasons like we talked about, but I think Benson's obviously a more talented back than any of those three guys. He brings a little bit more to the table than those guys can offer for sure.
To your point about, right, when we talk about Jacoby Brissett, like this Arizona run game is not really doing the trick right now. Like this feels like an offensive line that should be set up to run block. And I know that once you take Kyler Murray out of it, then your whole game plan kind of switches. Because whether he's a good quarterback or not, his start of his legs is something that you really kind of have to build your offense around. Now they don't really have that. Trey Benson comes back, maybe he can provide a little bit of that. So I assume when he comes back, he gets that lead work, that bell cow rule. So yeah, I agree. Like if there's any time to pick him up, I guess now is the time. And then kind of monitor his injuries going forward. If you don't have anyone on IR and he's still out, you pick him up, throw him in your IR spot, and you can re-pick up whoever you dropped for him. But yeah, I agree. There are 4 running backs that Henry talked about. We're going to talk about one more, and everyone else can go to the article to read him. The one that I want to talk about selfishly is Emmanuel Wilson with the Packers. So right, Josh Jacobs goes out last week with a knee injury. Doesn't seem to be anything too bad of a knee injury, but just given how much Josh Jacobs runs the ball, it feels like he's going to be, if he's playing, he's going to be limited. He might not even play in this game. In steps Emmanuel Wilson, who probably he's a front runner to get those carries. I think he's definitely worth a pickup just because we know how much the Packers want to run the ball. We know that Matt LaFleur succeeds the best when he's running the ball. That kind of opens up those deep shots that everyone talks about. So that brings into question, can Emmanuel Wilson do what Josh Jacobs does? I don't think he can do that. He's going to get the carries. This Packers offensive line has not been great run blocking, but there are avenues for it. So I want to say, I'm saying all this to temper my expectations on Emmanuel Wilson. I think he's a good player. Plus, Packers have Chris Brooks, so they really like. He's a good pass blocker. But I think Emmanuel Wilson's worth a pickup. I don't know if you're starting him right away though against I know they haven't been great this year, but I'm still very scared of Minnesota's defense.
Yeah, that's kind of where I'm at. Minnesota's defense is kind of like you said. They've been sometimes they've been okay, sometimes they've been not so great. I like that you brought up Chris Brooks because that's kind of where my mind went immediately was Emmanuel Wilson was probably slated to take over a lot of the running work, like a lot of the base work, and I think probably Chris Brooks probably slots in more passing situations. He was already kind of playing a lot of pass down work anyway with Jacobs healthy, so I don't think his role changes that much. I just think Emmanuel Wilson gets in on a lot of the base work that Josh Jacobs was eating up.
Mm-hmm.
Um, I'm like you, temper expectations. Throw him on your bench if he comes out this week and he just kind of for some reason dominates Chris Brooks on touch wise. You know, you can start him maybe next week if Josh Jacobs is still nagging injury. But I don't think he's going to just blow away anybody that tries to start him.
Yeah. So I selfishly talked about the Packers now, Ashton. You can talk about the Falcons a little bit here. How are we feeling about Kyle Pitts? Michael Penix is obviously out. Bringing in Kirk Cousins. Is that an upgrade? Is that a downgrade? As an outsider of Falcons football, it really feels like maybe it's kind of very similar situations. But Atlanta is on the road against New Orleans. New Orleans is favored in the game.
Should be.
Yeah. Any confidence in Kyle Pitts this week?
I'm going to be honest. I don't have confidence in any Falcons players. With not even saying Kirk Cousins is a downgrade for Michael Penix. I just don't think we saw this already like last year. Kirk doesn't even with the Achilles thing. I don't even think he has the movement skills to hand the ball off to Bijan and Pistol anymore. The one play I watched of the Falcons this weekend after Penix went down was Kirk Cousins almost falling over trying to reach the ball out to get it to Bijan. So I have really strong concerns just systemically on the Falcons pretty much for the rest of the season. Drake London's out too, so maybe that, or I don't know if he's fully out. I remains to be seen. I know he's injured. I just don't trust Kyle Pitts at all. He was already hard to trust when the offense was fully healthy, in every other situation. And I think this just kind of exacerbates everything. I think you're still starting Bijan, obviously, going forward. You're not going to not start Bijan Robinson. But for me, I don't think I'd start Pitts unless I'm really desperate at tight end.
All right. Yeah, I don't disagree with you. I think Atlanta's in a situation where it's kind of, right, just get to the end of the season without anything crazy happening. So I'm not expecting huge performances out of anyone. There is opportunity against New Orleans defense, which is not the greatest. But to your point, how much are we really trusting Kirk Cousins at this point in his career? Juan in the chat, shout out Juan Pena. Who for his wide receiver 2, 3, and flex spot? He's got Devontae Adams as wide receiver 1, Jonathan Taylor, Travion Henderson as RB1, RB2. For wide receivers, so we're picking between these: Hollywood Brown, Tez Johnson, Parker Washington, Jordan Addison, Jacoby Myers. Let's start with that for now. I think Jordan Addison is a must start for me out of these.
Yeah, I lean Addison. I know it was ugly last week with some of the drop stuff he had going on. He did eventually I'm not going to say he got it, but he did get it in the end zone to kind of salvage his week a little bit. I just think out of this group, he's probably the only other one I'd really consider is I'm not considering Jacoby Myers, I don't think. I don't think I'm considering Hollywood Brown. I think really between my wide receiver 2 and 3, I'm considering Tez Johnson, Parker Washington, Jordan Addison. Of those 3, maybe I sit depending on what Brian Thomas's status looks like, maybe I'm sitting Parker Washington, but I think Addison's the must start of that group for sure.
Yeah, if you're making me, I'm picking 2 other receivers here. I think I'm doing Addison. I think I'm doing Parker Washington. I love Tez Johnson. I don't love the matchup with the Rams.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think I'm doing Parker Washington because I think he's a better chance of getting a touchdown than Jacoby Myers. So, that is what it is. And then for his flex spot, take those guys. He's got Zach Charbonnet, Josh Jacobs, who's questionable, and then he has Debo and Quentin Johnson on bye. Obviously, Josh Jacobs, if he plays, you have to play Josh Jacobs. If not, I think Charbonnet is fine.
Yeah, that's where I was going to go. Is I think it's Charbonnet, and you hope he falls in the end zone or catches 5 passes.
Yeah. So Juan, I think, as Ashton jumps out here, Juan, I think I'm doing Addison, Parker Washington, Zach Charbonnet. T-Bomb, where's Trevor? Trevor will be on tomorrow. He'll be on Thursday. When we do a Lombardi sweep tomorrow, we will do our fantasy football kind of round up last second thoughts before Thursday Night Football on Thursday. With that being said, let's keep going down Henry's list here. Another wide receiver that I get to selfishly talk about is one second. Another wide receiver I get to selfishly talk about here is Christian Watson, owning 26.2% of leagues. I mean, I'll like against the Giants. That was right the best Packers game since they played Pittsburgh, and really it kind of felt like it was Christian Watson's, I guess, coming out party, even though he only caught 4 passes, but with 2 of them being touchdowns, it's definitely cause for being excited about Christian Watson. As always, I'm going to have the same opinion that I'm probably always going to have about Christian Watson. It's to tread lightly, as I think he can go 2 for 20 and nothing, or 6 for 102 touchdowns. Now I know that was kind of in the middle last week, but he did put in that good week scoring the 2 touchdowns. It's obvious that Luke Musgrave is still finding his footing as a tight end, and the Packers are still working towards that other pass catcher. We'll say Malik Heath did not play last week. He wasn't even involved. I think he's back this week. And Matthew Golden should be back. It's a loaded receiving core against a good Minnesota defense. I think if you need someone to pick up, I think Christian Watson's fine being picked up. He's going to be on the field. He's going to be playing snaps. But I'm not going out expecting him to come away with 8 for 100 and 2 touchdowns or anything like that.
Yeah, for sure. I think the biggest thing with I said this in my main dynasty group chat. I was like, Christian Watson's got to be the first wide receiver ever to tear his ACL and come back like 300% better than he was when he got injured. Like, I don't know where all this has come from. Maybe he just knows ball now. He's figured out his role. He knows what LaFleur wants from him, and he's just executing on a high level. But I mean, he like I said, he's had a couple of serviceable games here in a few weeks in a row, so nothing to sneeze at. I'm like you though, tread lightly. He's kind of a big play guy. Almost like if you want to equate it to like what people thought Deontay Thornton might be, he's kind of in that same mold to a sense. So he's a very kind of boomer bust to me.
Yeah,
and like you laid out, Minnesota defense is solid. So I wouldn't feel great about starting him, but I wouldn't be surprised if he did have a pretty good game for me.
Yeah, I think if you need a Hail Mary play where you don't have any other options, and you have to win this week, and there's no really else to go. I think Christian Watson's fine. I think you'll have fun rooting for him, because you get to root for those big plays. So I'm in favor of doing it that way. I'm just not expecting him to be, come away with Jamar Chase, Justin Jefferson, which I guess neither of those have
These days ain't much.
I should say Jackson Smith and Jigba numbers.
There you go.
So take that with you, Will. Another. Let's go 2 more receivers here. Jaden Higgins, Houston Texans, rookie coming in. It's taken some time for him to really get involved in this offense, but now that he's here, he really feels involved in this offense. Second on the team in snaps played at the wide receiver position on Sunday, both ahead of Christian Kirk and Xavier Hutchinson, which kind of feels like, he's staked his place among the depth chart behind Nico Collins. And it's been the third time in the last 4 games where he's targeted at least 7 times. Finished with 4 receptions too. So this feels really Christian Watson-esque to me. If you need a guy, he's getting targets. I think it all really depends on if he gets in the end zone, which I don't really think he's going to get in the end zone. But again, 4 receptions, 7 targets, like that feels fine for a wide receiver flex if you need it.
Yeah, for sure. I'm like you, touchdown dependent flex play for me. Don't feel great about starting Davis Mills going up against the Bills. I mean, the Bills have been getting in shootouts a little bit this year, so maybe Thursday night turns into one of those crazy like 45-42 games, something of that nature. I'm treading lightly on the entire Texans team.
Yeah.
I don't think, other than Nico Collins, I don't think I want to start anybody from the Texans if I can help it, just because they are going to be missing Stroud once again. Just kind of a tough week for them, going up against the Bills on Thursday night. Last week was my first time on the opposite end of the Josh Allen Nuke game, and it just did not feel good at all. It sucks because you're just sitting there and you're watching him go, oh my God, he scored again.
Yeah.
That's another rushing touchdown. Jesus Christ. And it just not fun. 0 out of 10. Do not recommend. He's been one of my favorite fantasy players for a long time, so it's always nice to see one of my guys eat, but it didn't feel great when he was eating against me.
Yeah. T-Bomb, how you guys doing? T-Bomb, it's good to have you back. We're doing great. How are you doing? How are you doing in your leagues? Let us know. Have you won any money this year? Give us a little insight into how fantasy football is going for you. One other receiver to talk about, Michael Wilson with Arizona. I was obviously, slotted in and I guess kind of produced in Jacoby Brissett's, record-setting game. That came at the cost of no Marvin Harrison. I think if Marvin Harrison is not playing, I really do like Michael Wilson because to what we were saying, like Arizona is probably going to be behind. They're probably going to throw in the ball, and at this point, Michael Wilson is the second option behind Trey McBride, right? So I don't know. Like he had wide receiver 1 finish in fantasy. I'm not expecting that. Not expecting 15 receptions, but like 6-7 receptions for 60 yards, 70 yards, and gets in the end zone. That's a really solid week for someone that you're going to pick up and put into your flex.
Yeah, man. I did not have Michael Wilson target hog game on my bingo card for the 2025 NFL season, but here we are all the same. Probably more of a product of Jacoby completing 47 passes
right
than anything else. But I'm like you. If Marv's out again, we know they're probably going to be playing from behind. They're going to have to throw the ball. I don't think he's a bad option. I always kind of thought he could play. I never thought he was going to be like from a prospect and like a player like skill set perspective. I never really thought he was going to be like an alpha receiver anywhere. Just a really good complementary receiver. So it's nice to see him kind of like getting some good games together. If Marv's out, I might fire him up. I just hope he can kind of somewhat recreate what he's had going on the past couple of weeks.
Yeah. I still think, and I'm trying to talk myself in here. If Marv is playing, is Michael Wilson worth the start? Probably not, right? It just feels like there's too many ways that Arizona can go. But just given that they're probably going to be passing the ball, like Mike Wilson's going to be on the field. I feel a lot more safe, right, with Marvin Williams. Shout out Carolina with Marvin Harrison off the field. But I don't know. I think Michael Wilson is definitely worth a pickup. And if Marvin Harrison's playing, stash him. You don't have to play him. Make sure someone else doesn't get him. But if he isn't, I agree. Lock and load, put him in your lineup because I'm in on it. I the ball in order to be here. Tight ends. Tight ends, we are going to talk about a guy that we've talked about all year. Still only owned in 35% of league. Currently, tight end 8 on the year. Which if I told you that tight end 8 was sitting on the waiver wire at week 12 as you're looking at the fantasy playoffs, it kind of feels like everyone should be jumping on top of that. They should be owned like 90% of leagues. That is one Juwan Johnson for the New Orleans Saints. Coming off a bye, his ownership didn't change, right? 23 total targets over the last 4 games with a pair of touchdowns. Again, it feels like he's been that big, safe, easy target for Tyler Shuck as he's getting, getting his feet wet in the NFL here. Juwan Johnson does really have kind of some sneaky run after the catch that nobody was really talking about skills. I think if I'm betting on anyone any week to score a touchdown for the New Orleans Saints, it's hard to say that anyone, maybe Chris Olave, but even that anyone more than Juwan Johnson plays Atlanta, who's been good against the tight ends this week. So if you pick him up, proceed with caution. But is this, is this a game where New Orleans can really run the ball and maybe there's a quick game for Atlanta and then Juwan Johnson can get one and run a little bit? I don't know. But again, wide receiver 8's nothing to scoff at. If you're finding wide receiver or tight end 8 is what I mean, tight end 8 on the waiver wire in week 12, I think you're picking that up 10 times out of 10.
Yeah, I'm starting him in a league this week where I've got to win. I don't have to win the next 2 weeks to make playoffs, but it would definitely be helpful to do so. And Arondé Gadsden's on bye, so it's Juwan Johnson for me this week over Pat Freiermuth, obviously. But yeah, I totally agree with a lot of what you said. Falcons have been one of the best defenses against tight ends this year as far as fantasy scoring goes, which is just kind of a weird one-off. You can run on the Falcons this year. Teams have been getting it done on the ground against Atlanta. Kind of almost been a run funnel defense at times. I'm not worried about old man Alvin at this point. He's kind of just been lackluster this year.
Yeah.
So I think that from a run game standpoint, I don't think that it can be a situation where Alvin Kamara just racks up like 150 yards and 2 scores. So I think the Saints are going to have to throw the ball. And I'm like you. I think besides now, especially now with Rashid Shaheed out of town, I think Juwan Johnson's the easy second target in that offense. He's going to be working the seam while Chris Olave works, wherever he works on the field. He can work pretty much anywhere. But I think Juwan Johnson's a solid play just because the Saints are going to have to throw the ball. He's the second read in the offense theoretically, and I think that the role's just so good. He's getting a lot of targets, just kind of like he was earlier in the season, getting these huge target games. And anytime you got a tight end that's getting that many targets, he's worth a start.
Yeah, agreed 100%. And we got one more player to talk about. Anyone else in the chat? I know this is kind of a quick show, but anyone else in the chat, drop some questions before we get out of here. Drop some questions after the fact. We will get to them all. But actually, my last one is kind of a Hail Mary. I'm happy that Henry threw him on here because this came to my mind. If you need a tight end, if you're in absolute desperate need of a tight end, you just need to put someone in your lineup just to hopefully not get zero. Brock Wright for Detroit is probably starting right with Sam Laporta out. Detroit's at home, like we mentioned, against the Giants. Detroit is awesome at home against, not that great of a defense. Brock Wright last week played 40 of 59 snaps, targeted 7 times. If you need a deep tight end, I think Brock Wright is as good as you can get, owning 1.3% of the league. Dan Campbell has been a backup tight end his whole career in the NFL, so he's got some love for it. So I wouldn't be surprised if Brock Wright saw 6 to 8 targets and finds himself in the end zone this week.
Yeah, you saying he had 7 targets hurts my soul because I definitely played Brock Wright over 2.5 receptions at plus money this week. And didn't even look at his target total. I just knew that the bet lost, and hearing that he had 7 targets just really hurts my soul.
Yeah, it's a tough game.
Tough loss. It happens. But, same thing. We know he's going to be on the field. Detroit's going to air the ball out. They kind of have a lot of mouths to feed between Gibbs, Monty, J-Mo, and Amon-Ra. But I think that Brock Wright finds a way to get something. He's not going to be a stone zero in your lineup. I don't think, he may go out there and catch only 2 balls for 20 yards, but he could just as easily go out there and catch 4 for 40 and a score. And, if you're grabbing him off waivers and you're just saying, please don't give me a 0, then that's kind of all you need.
Yeah, that's always been right. That's always the issue with the Detroit Lions is there's so many mouths to feed. They got 2 running backs going. Amon-Ra St. Brown's a target hog. We've seen Jameson Williams get involved a lot lately. But people are still loading up Sam Laporta and starting him. I don't think Brock Wright is that different than Sam Laporta. I think Sam Laporta is probably a little bit better after the catch, right, and on the run a little bit. But in terms of a role, I think he steps into that role and plays that tight end role. It's going to be that tight end role is going to be used. It's always been used in this Detroit offense with Dan Campbell. So I don't think Brock Wright should only be owned in 1.3% of leagues. I'm curious how many people actually do start him this week. But I think, like we've been saying, you need something. I don't think it's a 0 in your lineup with Brock Wright this week.
Yeah, for what it's worth, I know we had the question about Kyle Pitts earlier in the show. I'm starting Brock Wright over Kyle Pitts, I think.
I don't hate it.
I have 0 confidence in the Falcons. My confidence was already very low, and it's going to be even lower with possibly no Drake London and no Michael Penix and Kirk Cousins at the helm. It's so funny. Getting very close to dumpster fire territory, and the Rams own the Falcons' first-round pick. So we're about to give one of the best teams in the NFL already a top 10 pick in all likelihood. So
yeah, not
great sometimes.
Yeah, not great. One other quarterback that I just wanted to talk about, and he's injured, so you're not picking up. You're probably not starting him if you don't have to. But it's Aaron Rodgers plays the Bears this week. We know what Aaron Rodgers does against the Bears. He owns that franchise. He puts up numbers against them. I think he's questionable to play this week. I do think he plays because I don't think Aaron Rodgers is going to miss a Bears game. I think that's a fun play. I don't think he's going to go out and throw for 300 yards and 4 touchdowns, but it's a fun one to follow. Maybe I'm just too ingratiated into Aaron Rodgers lore, but I don't know. I love seeing Aaron Rodgers play against the Bears. He owns them.
That's the one thing you asked me. One thing about Aaron Rodgers that sticks out of my mind. It's him running that touchdown in late in his career against the Bears, and I don't even know if it was at the fans or if it was at the DB that tried to push him out of bounds. It's like, I own you, and I still own you, and I always will, or something like that. So sick, man. That's what it's all about right there. So big ups, Aaron.
I watched the Super Bowl with him, and that him saying I own you to the Bears fans is my favorite football moment of all time. Caden in the chat real quick. Should he drop Jordan Love for Bo Nix or Brock Purdy? Jordan Love at home this week against the Minnesota Vikings. Bo Nix is on bye. And Brock Purdy is home against the Carolina Panthers. I think Love and Purdy it feels like the exact same player in my mind in terms of fantasy. And if you're dropping Love for Nix, you better have a backup plan at quarterback. I think Love is all right this week. I like Purdy's matchup with the Panthers a little bit more. I don't think Love is definitely he's not an undroppable player. So like if you have to, if you don't like your lineup, I think Purdy is a better matchup than Love. So I guess I'm saying yes, but I don't know. It doesn't really feel like it's a move that benefits your team that much.
Yeah, this one to me just comes down to which team do I think has the more like fantasy friendly, QB friendly offense, and I think it's the 49ers.
Yeah.
Um, maybe a better matchup too. I don't know. Carolina's surprisingly been like decent this year. Just kind of weird. Um,
One game out of the division. 2 games? One game.
yeah, surprisingly.
Yeah.
Something like that. I think out of this, you're obviously keeping the Knicks on your roster. I think I don't hate dropping Love to start Purdy, just because I think that the Panthers probably present more of a challenge than the Cardinals did last week. Um, even from just an offensive standpoint, which feels weird to say about a Bryce Young led team, but um, I think that this is a game where instead of being able to hand the ball to Christian McCaffrey like 25, 30 times, Purdy's going to be asked to make plays, and they're going to have to get something going in the pass game. So I think I'm talking myself into starting Purdy in this situation over Love.
Yeah, I don't. Yeah, and I'm sorry, I read the question wrong. Is he dropping Love or Nix for Purdy? Rest of the season, I think, like I said, I think all these guys are really the same in that same tier in my mind. I don't think anything really changes with your team if you drop Love or Nix for Purdy. Um, you probably do run the risk of if you drop one of them, they're going to get picked up. But again, with Brock Purdy starting, I don't think it really matters that much. To your point, like what San Francisco has on offense with their weapons. I mean, Christian McCaffrey is going to catch 7 balls a game, and he's going to go for probably 70 yards and a touchdown. So it's that much more. So yeah, I think Purdy's fine. I think Purdy's fine rest of the season if you're not looking to pick up Love or Knicks back up.
Yeah, I think what's helping out Knicks too is J.K. Dobbins is looking like he might miss the rest of the season. I think RJ Harvey's kind of an unknown still as far as being able to kind of carry an offense. So that might thrust the Broncos into more situations where Bo Nix is asked to throw the ball more potentially. I think out of these three, I think Nix is the easy like rest of season play for me, but I don't mind. The other two are very close. I think the other two could be a matchup dependent kind of thing.
I agree, Caden. Thank you for the question. Anyone else with questions, please leave them in the comments wherever you are consuming this. YouTube, Twitch, Facebook, Twitter, wherever you're finding this. We will get to all the questions. Check out FlurrySports.org. We got a lot of stuff coming out. You have your playoffs coming up. We have our playoffs coming up. We're trying to give out the best advice possible to give you the best chance of winning, best chance of getting to the playoffs, and best chance to winning a championship. Lots of stuff coming out. So as always, I appreciate everyone for watching. I appreciate all the questions. I appreciate all the chat. And we will be back next week. Actually, we don't have a lot of these shows left. Now that I'm thinking about it, we have 3 weeks until fantasy playoffs, and then 2 more weeks, so 5 total. 5 more shows of this, and then I don't know. We'll figure something out. Maybe we'll do some college basketball stuff in the offseason.
Yeah, there you go. Yeah, no, I just sorry for the gorilla kind of camera work for me tonight. I was sitting at a high school basketball game, and you sent the email to hop on the show, and I realized, oh shoot, it's Tuesday. So I've just been chilling out in the car, talking ball with the boys. No big deal.
Yeah, I will say
the game was kind of a snooze fest anyway. So
yeah, don't fret about that, Ashton. I've done shows where I've been driving 80 miles on the highway, just trying to talk ball. I've been in and out of connection, so I've been there. It's hey, we're grinding. We're making things work, right? So as always,
sure.
appreciate everyone. We will be back tomorrow if you want to get a closer idea of how the Green Bay Packers are. We have a Green Bay Packers podcast coming out, hosted by 3 Packers fans. Then we have our final thoughts on fantasy football right an hour before Thursday Night Football. We'll go right up to kickoff, maybe even a little bit into kickoff, talking ball, talking about really anything that people want to talk about. With that, appreciate everyone, and we will see you next week. Peace.